I'm going to introduce the panelists all together now, and we do have lunches and other things on the other end of this. So I'm going to be the efficient, keeping us to time, and I'm going to spare us the long bios and introductions. So on the stage with me today is the Honourable Jim Carr, Minister of Natural Resources, and the MP for Winnipeg Centre. South Centre, excuse me. Minister Carr is a friend of Globe. It's his first Globe, but he's been with the Business Council of Manitoba for many years and worked to create a Canadian energy strategy. So you'll be interested in his remarks. We're here to talk about disruptive innovation. And what could be more disruptive than the first panel cutting 20 minutes into our session? But the other thing that's going to be exciting is we have Deb Frodel, who's the Global Executive Director of Eco-Imagination for GE. She's at the cutting edge of what's happening at GE and in disruptive changes from inside the company. We've got Paul Bunje, who's Senior Scientist, Energy and Environment with the XPRIZE. And the XPRIZE does some interesting things both in terms of how they motivate people to find disruptive innovations and the policy tools that they use, and he's got something interesting to tell us this morning. And then Wal van Lierop, who's President and CEO of Chrysalix Energy Venture Capital, and he'll tell you about all kinds of things that he's doing to fund and draw out disruptive change agents in the clean tech space. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Minister Carr to the stage.
Thanks, Velma. I'm so glad the theme is disruption. You may think that she's moderating this panel, and she is, but she's also been a very important player on the Canadian energy scene and environment for a long, long time. And I remember from 2009 when the President of the United States came to Canada on his first foreign mission and invited Prime Minister Harper to engage in a North American energy dialogue. And a few of us scratched our heads and said, well, what's the Canadian energy strategy? And there wasn't one. So we called a meeting, and where do you call meetings? The corner of Portage and Main and Winnipeg, of course, and everybody showed up. The 9 CEOs of the major think tanks came to talk about the same thing at the same time, and that was how to frame a Canadian energy strategy. That was accomplished. Velma was the glue to that strategy, and now fast forward 6 years, and the Council of the Federation has written a document that's very powerful and very important, and the Canadian government at long last has developed an interest in the Canadian energy strategy. And what I want to say to my friend Chris Henderson, who is responsible for all of this, is that he only disrupted my life 30 years ago when we met at a Commonwealth conference for young leaders. Let me tell you that even 30 years ago, neither Chris nor I was young. But here we are together on the same stage. And then the next date that's important for me is November the 4th, when we were sworn into cabinet. And the second most emotional moment was when Jody Wilson-Raybould was sworn in as Canada's Minister of Justice and Attorney General. In the early 1980s, her father, Bill Wilson, was appearing in front of Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau to talk about Indigenous rights in the context of Canadian constitutional reform. And Bill Wilson said in the course of his conversation with the Prime Minister that his 2 daughters were in the audience, and one of them wanted to be a lawyer. And there was all kinds of snickering in the background. Sure, a 2-year-old Indigenous woman wants to be a lawyer. Well, on November the 4th, she became Canada's Minister of Justice. And what had changed in those 30 years? A whole world. And one of the principles around the way in which we hope to get our natural resources to market sustainably is meaningful and deep engagement with Indigenous communities. That was a very important, transformative, disruptive moment. And then in Paris, we were traveling for the International Energy Agency meeting, and I met with the American Secretary of Energy, Ernest Moniz, and the Mexican Secretary of Energy, Pedro Joaquin Caldwell. And it was there when we learned about mission innovation. And we came back to Canada and we talked to colleagues and we wanted to know whether or not Canada could formalize in an international memorandum that it would double its investment in green technology. And there was a very happy coincidence. That was precisely what we had said we would do in our campaign platform. So the Prime Minister, along with 19 other heads of state from around the world, on November 30th, signed Mission Innovation. Mission Innovation was a disruptive moment because it committed 20 large nations to doubling its research on R&D. And that led to a meeting in Winnipeg, again, I'm sorry, where we invited Secretary Moniz and Secretary Coldwell, who were accompanied by the Undersecretary of Energy from Mexico, Leonardo Beltran, my friend, who is in the audience today. And we gathered in Winnipeg and signed a memorandum of understanding for Canada, the United States, and Mexico to work together collaboratively on a series of very important buckets of public policy. To have those three nations working together across a range that included carbon capture and storage, energy efficiency, clean electricity grids, and ways in which we can, together across the continent, work towards common international objectives. That in itself was transformative and I think in a real important way disruptive. And now we are hosting roundtables across the country. We've done it in Halifax and Winnipeg and Calgary and Vancouver, and again later on today. And around these tables, there are Indigenous leaders, industry leaders, environmentalists, all looking at ways to find middle ground, to find common ground, to find the sweet spot where we can develop our resources sustainably and move them to market. This is a very exciting time. Yesterday, when Smart Prosperity was announced, you had corporate leaders, you had Indigenous leaders, environmentalists, the Prime Minister of Canada, all on the same stage talking about common objectives to unite Canadians in an overarching goal: prosperity, clean jobs, and a sustainable way of developing resources and moving them to market. So I just simply want to say that on behalf of our government, and to echo the words of the Prime Minister, this is a special moment, a special time in a very special place, Vancouver. And we will commit partnership, passion, resources, and goodwill to the common effort. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Minister Carr was going to stay with us for a little while, but the delay means his schedule has him on to other meetings. And it's interesting because we now have a healthy number of the federal cabinet here in the building having meetings with people from other countries, with businesses, et cetera. And frankly, that's a bit of a disruptive innovation from what we've seen over the last few years. Deb, could I ask you to come to the stage or to the podium? Oops. Oh.
Thank you very much. Good morning. I am so delighted to be here with all of you today and share with you how we at GE, through our Eco-Imagination strategy, are using new business models, innovation, and partnerships to help and support our customers through what we believe is a historic time for the global energy transformation. Is it on the side?
There it is.
It is? Okay.
Oh,
I can't
it's on
see
the
it.
side.
It's on the side. Okay. Perfect. Before we begin, I thought it would be helpful just to give everybody a little bit of a progress report on Eco-Imagination. Okay, perfect. On Eco-Imagination, we launched the program 10 years ago in 2005. And from the beginning, it was always more than a typical corporate sustainability program only focused on internal operations. It was and still is part of GE's core strategy, innovation, except cleaner innovation. And today, Eco-Imagination has technology solutions that span the entire GE portfolio. We have some of the world's most efficient locomotives, aircraft engines, gas turbines, wind turbines, LED lighting, software, and beyond. We are helping to transform industry and customer outcomes, driving much greater efficiency, economics, and environmental performance at a scale that's unique to GE. Ecomagination has been an incredible success story. Over the last decade, we have exceeded our public commitments. Today, we have invested over $17 billion of cleaner technology R&D, well on our way to $25 billion by 2020. And that has returned us over $232 billion of GE revenues, a real proof point that our customers value these solutions in their operations today. We also have reduced GE's environmental footprint. We've reduced greenhouse gas emissions by 31%, freshwater use by 42%, and we're not stopping there. We're going to incrementally reduce another 20% by 2020. So we're proud of our results, but we are truly just getting started. So let's talk about energy. The global energy transformation has begun. Today, where a power plant is being built somewhere in the world, it is as likely to be renewable as it is fossil fuel or nuclear. Renewable energy today accounts for 50% of the global electricity capacity additions. It is now the second largest source of electricity generation next to coal, and it is rising quickly. As we point out in a recent report that we've launched in GE, we see this remarkable trend continuing to go through the end of the decade, driven by further innovation by companies like GE and others. The innovation that has transpired for renewable energy over the last decade, cost curves have come down substantially. It is now more grid-friendly and compatible with the energy power system. According to the IEA, between 2010 and 2015, the global average of onshore wind generation cost has been reduced by 30%, and PV solar development reduced by a full 2/3%. Unbelievable progress. So economics, innovation, but there are other trends that have really allowed us to accelerate renewables globally in this last decade. Three things: the rise of distributed power. You're seeing renewables both in centralized and decentralized capacity, allowing it to integrate with the existing systems and new business models. Wind, hydro, geothermal, all centralized. Obviously solar on the utility scale, as well as rooftop approaches. Integrated energy systems, you are now seeing conventional sources, renewable sources integrated together in hybrid systems. Gas, PV, solar are emerging quickly, and of course the digitization of energy. That has really allowed renewable transition to happen, marrying up the physical and digital worlds. So at GE, we have a huge commitment to enabling the global energy transformation over the next decade and beyond. So how are we going to do that? We're going to leverage our Ecomagination strategy. Ecomagination has always been about solving real-world challenges to help our customers grow and compete. From the beginning, there was never going to be a trade-off between economics and the environment for our customers. And as we look forward, there are three focus areas for the Ecomagination strategy as we look to the global energy transformation: new business models, innovation, and partnerships. Let's talk about each one of these individually. New business models are needed to be adopted and deployed in order to meet the challenges of today, as well as harness the opportunities. Today, customers are asking for integrated solutions that help them maximize economics and environmental performance, as well as they are looking for OpEx solutions versus CapEx solutions, and we are here to develop new ways to deliver those energy solutions for our customers. We are really excited at GE. We recently launched a brand new business, a startup in GE called Current. And it's a first-of-its-kind energy company where we are bringing together eco-imagination technologies like intelligent LEDs, solar, storage, on-site power, EV charging, all wrapped with a digital and financial capability to help our customers reduce their energy costs by 10 to 20%. New business models, innovative approaches are exactly what we will be focusing on to help our customers be most successful. So cleaner technology innovation is always going to be a primary focus for Eco-Imagination. And at GE, the $25 billion that we have committed for Eco-Imagination through 2020 is going to be focused in areas like gas development, next generation renewables, integrated energy systems, alternative fuel transportation, industrial water reuse, and of course software. Hardware and software together is allowing us to incrementally improve resource productivity to an entire new level. We're going to execute on all of this innovation through our 7 global research centers, where today we have 6,000 high-end scientists working on innovation and technology breakthroughs for both GE and Eco-Imagination. Our most recent center is in San Ramon, California. It is our software center. We have 3,000 data scientists and computer engineers working on industrial internet solutions. We believe the industrial internet is huge potential. And as the world marches forward to a digital economy, driving and asking for much more efficiency and productivity through the power of analytics. So we're very excited at GE. This year we launched XPRIZE, a cloud-based platform for the industrial internet that is open sourced. It's not just for GE. XPRIZE is now the foundation to help us drive much greater efficiency with energy as well as resources and improve emissions across many, many industries, all through the power of analytics. For example, digital solutions that are running on XPRIZE today allow us to have much greater wind energy production by up to 20%. In the transportation space, GE locomotives, our control software harnesses data from the train operations, weather, and routing patterns to have increased fuel savings as well as reduce emissions up to 17%. So absolutely incredible results from the industrial internet, and it is truly the future and core for GE and Eco-Imagination. And I look forward to coming back in future years and sharing some additional Eco-Imagination industrial apps that we are currently working on. So another and final important pillar of our strategy is commercial partnerships. We believe that in order to drive exponential progress, we need to partner, find new ways to develop and deploy economic and sustainable solutions, really solve the toughest resource and environmental challenges of today. We are absolutely thrilled to be partnered with like-minded industry leaders focused on innovation, sustainability, and problem solving. Together with our partners, we are going to accomplish scaling and deploying industrial water reuse technology and wastewater to energy solutions to help with water scarcity. We're going to be developing hybrid renewable solutions and new business models for the developing world. We are now going to focus on ultra efficiency solutions that can be deployed in our operations, supply chains, our customers, and we will collaborate on industrial internet applications to reduce waste in manufacturing around water and energy. We want to inspire others to join us, to come along and collaborate to solve tough challenges, but we also want to encourage global industry to partner. We believe that is how together we will transform tomorrow. So after 10 years, Eco-Imagination is still core to the business strategy, and now in the midst of the global energy transformation, it's more important than ever. It's been an incredible success story. However, we do step back and reflect on the lessons learned of the strategy. And when we launched 10 years ago, we had a lot of skeptics that said, you know, it's all about the green movement, it's going to cost too much, customers aren't going to buy in, and GE, you'll be standing there all by yourself. We quickly learned that this was a differentiator. We could, in fact, deliver real outcomes for our customers, create jobs, and now today solve more complex issues than ever. So as you look ahead, one big observation in this transformation is this is really disruptive. Disruptive on many fronts, but at the same time creates such enormous opportunity for consumers, government, and business, but most importantly, society as a whole. And GE is very committed And we believe it is time to seize the opportunity to come together, work together, and really create that sustainable energy system that is good for the planet, our people, and the world economy. So thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to the panel discussion.
Thank you, Deb. We're going to move into this format now, and I'm going to ask Paul Bunje to tell us a little bit about the XPRIZE and the kinds of things you're doing there to create a little disruption.
Absolutely, and this it's actually really exciting to be able to follow some of the amazing work that GE is doing through Eco-Imagination. This is exactly the kind of new model that we need every corporation to be moving into. So at XPRIZE, what we're looking to do is quite candidly change the world by inviting absolutely anybody to create a breakthrough solution that can get us not a little bit better, not twice better, but at least 10x, 100x better on various challenges. So what we do is, and it's a pretty simple process, right? Identify the world's grand challenges. Climate change is sort of an obvious one. And then put a target on the back of that challenge and invite anyone in the world to meet that target, to solve that breakthrough. If you do, you win money. Millions and millions of dollars of it. It's a prize. As simple as you might think, but it's got some really remarkable features to how this works. I'll give you an example. Since we're talking about disruptive innovation for climate change, we recently launched our first prize directly targeting climate change. That's the NRG COSIA Carbon XPRIZE, which is literally meant to change the way we think about carbon, but not just the way we think about it in our heads, in our hearts, et cetera, but the way markets think about carbon. So there are three principles that drove that. Number one, carbon dioxide drives climate change. Again, literally design thinking 101. Be as simple as you can.
You are a scientist, after
I am a scientist. And most of the carbon dioxide emissions, the largest share of that comes from the generation of electricity, coal and natural gas primarily around the world. That's principle one. Number two, carbon is a building block for most of the things we care about in life. There's absolutely no reason we should think of carbon dioxide just as a waste product, something that just goes into the atmosphere and causes climate change. Let's rethink, reimagine what carbon dioxide can do. And number three, we can turn markets onto this. It's incredibly important, of course, that we have governments and prices on carbon, regulatory structures and the like, but we really, in order to get to scale, to really change the way the world deals with carbon dioxide and ultimately climate change, we need market forces, just as Deb, you were saying, to get immediately behind this. So the way we structured the NRG COSIA Carbon XPRIZE is thus. We said that for any team that can convert the most carbon dioxide coming straight out of a power plant, a coal or a natural gas-fired power plant, turn as much of that CO2 into one or more products that have the highest net value that you can sell into marketplace, wins. And there could be a couple of winners because you can compete in a coal track or a natural gas track. They're going to share in $20 million to bring this home. So that's cool, right? So it's also fun to win money. It's fun to give out big checks too, candidly. That's always exciting. But there's actually a secret trick in the way these prize competitions work. Well, it's not really that secret, and it's not really a trick, but it's really where the power comes in. And that's to say that those teams that take home the cash may win a lot of money, but that's not really the prize. And in fact, it's all of the teams and partners that are a part of this competition that are taking home the real prize, which is a market in the future. What we like to say is that when we award a prize, that's when the real change begins. The day the prize is awarded is when the markets take over. And I'll give you an example of how this works. This is really kind of fun. It's a leveraging effect. Some of you may remember the first XPRIZE, which was about 12 years ago for private spaceflight, the Ansari XPRIZE that put Spaceship One into orbit, is now become Virgin Galactic. That prize was worth $10 million, but the teams trying to win that, if you added up all the money they spent trying to win the prize, they spent well over $100 million just trying to win that $10 million, right? So we got a 10x leverage just in that competition. And we expect to see that in every prize competition, every one we've analyzed, which means I expect by 2020, teams will invest well over $200 million just trying to win this Carbon XPRIZE. So that's a leverage on R&D for a breakthrough carbon utilization technology that is unbelievable. But there's another multiple, there's another order of magnitude, and that's what the market is worth. And again, we have the most evidence from the Ansari XPRIZE. Private spaceflight was basically a non-existent industry in 2004 when we awarded this. There was a little bit of work on it, a little bit of investment, but you didn't have the SpaceX's of the world or Orbital or Blue Origin out there doing what they're doing now. Now we're up to, from basically no industry, almost a $3 billion a year industry 10 years later. That's what we want to see with carbon utilization. It's the exact same sort of thing. How do we use technology as a driver of new markets to disrupt those markets and say, we can make money. We literally can make money by either pulling carbon dioxide out of the air or directly out of those power plants that are driving climate change and get the market to help do that. One last piece of that that I want to sort of mention, and this is real credit to our partners and how this works. There's some friends from COSIA, Canada's Oil Sands Innovation Alliance, which is one of our sponsors in the audience. Please chat with them as well about this. In order to compete in an XPRIZE, you actually need to demonstrate something. This is not an ideas competition. This is a prove it competition. And so to do that, we create a level playing field. And in this prize, for example, there are actually going to be 2 test centers, test and commercialization centers, one that's already been announced, built in Wyoming. You can actually go to the wyomingitc.org website, literally next to a coal-fired power plant, where teams will go and have most of a year to actually demonstrate their technology on us. That's a pretty remarkable opportunity not only to demonstrate these. The other natural gas-fired one will actually be here in Canada, in Alberta, and we're not quite ready yet to announce it, but that is going to be, those 2 things are going to ultimately be one of the biggest pieces of driving this market transformation. Because you can imagine, if you want, everyone here who's involved in either investment or some other aspect of clean tech knows that just being able to demonstrate and test out these types of technologies itself is one of the biggest barriers to getting through this. How do you get from the lab to scale? So by literally building these commercialization centers, we expect that for years to come, we're going to be transforming how it is that those local economies become potentially clusters of innovation around particularly carbon dioxide mitigation, but also how new business models can flow from that and really drive novel applications in fields far afield from carbon utilization, because there'll be these legacy aggregators of brilliance and opportunity that we expect will really help drive these kind of disruptive breakthroughs we want to see.
That's fantastic. Paul, how many of these Prove It teams do you have working on the COSIA Carbon Prize right now?
That's a great question. So we just launched this prize in September of last year. Registration is currently open. So anybody that knows somebody that wants to win $20 million, sign up. Just go to carbon.xprize.org and sign up. We actually have two X Prizes. My colleague will be talking about the Shell Ocean Discovery X Prize later today, which you can also compete in. What I'm excited to tell you about this one is we have had the fastest rate of sign up for any X Prize on this Carbon X Prize to date, which is amazing. So we've got 900 registered users, we call them. These are people that have raised their hands and said, I'm interested in doing this. We have well over 100, almost 120 teams that have started to create their opportunity. And we're right now rolling in the actual contracts and registration fees. We've already got 11 or 12 now that have signed this contract. And again, you can sign up through July. So this rate is exciting. And in my mind, it's exciting because this is a really hard thing. How do you build a contraption, which is well beyond my pay grade, that can actually take this carbon dioxide and chemically convert it into a fuel or a cement or a polymer or some other product that markets need? How is it that many people think they can solve this incredibly difficult problem? Well, A, there are 7 billion potential solvers on this planet. And B, most of them care about climate change. Most of them want to do something. And I think that's a real testament to the amount of capacity there is to solve these problems.
And just one final point of clarification for the audience, but those teams are all over the world,
All
right?
over the world.
All over the world.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. And Wal, what a great introduction to you. So Paul's innovation is to create markets, and your job is to capitalize on those markets.
Isn't it exciting what they're telling here? I mean, it reminds me actually why this is so necessary. Let me tell you a little story. When Buzz Aldrin, the second man on the moon in 1969, was interviewed last year, they asked him, Buzz, when you stepped off the moon almost 40 years ago, what do you think the world would look like by 2050? And his answer was, of course, we expected to have colonies on Mars by now. And instead, we got Facebook and Twitter. What we are working on here at the podium, and in particular also us on Crystallix, is industrial innovations that matter, capitalizing on the fourth industrial revolution of today, after the electronics and IT and automotive production revolution of the 1900s and early 2000s. This fourth industrial revolution is characterized by the fusion of technologies that are blurring the lines between physical, digital, and biological spheres. The World Economic Forum calls it cyber-physical technologies. They are physical-based from chemistry, physics, biology, but enabled by software and connectivity that are increasing performance and bringing costs down exponentially. And relevant technologies include robotics, autonomous driving, virtual reality, advanced materials, 3D printing, sensors, networks, synthetic biology, nanotechnology, quantum computing. Allow me to give you a few examples. General Fusion here in Vancouver, a XPRIZE portfolio company, well on its way to produce cheap and safe fusion energy, with no more radiation than the average academic hospital, and hardly any rest nuclear waste, is truly the holy grail of clean energy. But it wasn't possible between 1916 and 1982 when the US military and Los Alamos was working on it. They had to stop things in 1982 because the science was not there. And it was not until about 10 years ago when the founders of General Fusion realized that breakthrough in plasma science and breakthrough in computer science enabled them to do what Los Alamos and US militaries couldn't do. Another example, MindSense, also a company we are working on at XPRIZE, is building the mine of the future. It's bringing sensors and artificial intelligence to the actual operation equipment, so that when the operator takes a big scoop of rock, in real time he gets a read whether that rock is worthwhile to be hauled up from the mine and then sent down the road for crushing and for the further processing, or if he or she simply lays it aside. This solves a tremendous problem in the mining industry, and it's called waste rock. It reduces the shipment of waste rock by more than 50%, increasing enormous productivity, reducing enormous amounts of diesel oil, and for every barrel of oil you use, you probably use multiple barrels of water. So it is very good for the environment. Other examples include nanosteel we're working on, steel 3D printing, D-Wave, Tesla, E-bomb, carbon 3D, which grows parts instead of building them up layer by layer, and many others. And believe it or not, many of these companies are here in Vancouver. This type of new industrial evolution has an enormous impact on virtually all industries, from resource and energy exploration and utilization to the next generation manufacturing and distribution, impacting these existing automation manufacturing companies, the chemical industry, the electric power industries, and also many ways in which we consume things, call it smart living. It will have an enormous impact on utilities, the automotive industry, construction, and even aerospace. And when you sum this up like this, it is no surprise that McKinsey calls this the biggest investment opportunity in our lifetime. That is what this fourth industrial innovation revolution is all about. Now, some of you may by now want me to go back to the topic of this panel session with the question, do we really need more new technologies to battle the war on climate? And of course, let's be clear, a lot has already been done, and the rapidly decreasing cost of solar, wind, and energy Deb talked about that make investment in renewables much cheaper than the grid in many places in the world already. But we need more. Why? Let me share you a funny tweet from Michael Liebrecht of Bloomberg New Energy Finance a few weeks ago. He claims that it would take the UK an extra 3 terawatt of power to switch all the 35 million cars and all the 60 million households in the UK to electricity, which they would need to meet their COP21 targets. That is the equivalent of building hundreds of thousands more windmills. Virtually impossible. We need more. Google actually tried it. And in November 2014, they said, we cannot power all our server parks with just wind and solar. And then last week, Bloomberg forecasted that they currently foresee the electric vehicle to take off by 2022. At that moment in time, they will replace 2 billion barrels of oil per day. And electric vehicles will, according to Bloomberg, grow to a 35% market share worldwide by 2014, at that moment taking more than 13 barrels of oil a day out of the market. Now, this may be bad news for the oil industry, but we should also think about what this means for many countries in trying to achieve their COP21 targets if by 2040, according to Bloomberg, the internal combustion engine is still the dominant source for automotive. We really need new technologies to scatter the forecast in the same way as the forecast for solar and wind and energy storage have been ripped apart over and over again in the past 10 years. We need to go faster. So we need more breakthrough innovations, fusion, wave power, something totally new. And the good news is that there are many very bright people who will be involved, as Paul just indicated. And it is also, of course, very encouraging to see that many more countries are stepping up to the plate to help finance this. We have to applaud our government and also the BC government for what they recently announced in their BC tax strategy. But the financing will primarily need to come from the private sector. Now, you have heard a few numbers already today, but let me just put in perspective what the real size of the prize is that we're working on here. The International Energy Agency is continuously forecasting that a full switch to 100% renewables by 2050 will cost 44 trillion. A scary big number. It's just shy of the combined GDP in 2015 of the EU, US, and China combined. In addition, the insurance industry is getting very, very nervous. Only already in Miami, there's $3.5 trillion of property in danger of high floods. 3.5 trillion. And then let's go to the 28 trillion in carbon assets still on the books of the oil and gas companies. That all these assets will be burned is, according to Al Gore, a bigger scam than portrayed in the movie The Big Short. Many of you, of course, already have seen. And I maybe don't want to go as far, but we need to deal with that too, because if we don't do this, within a number of years, we may be confronted with what I would call a subprime carbon issue, a subprime carbon crisis. The short is that there will be enormous shifts in the world economies over the next decades, but that is a very exciting investment opportunity towards sustainable growth. This is the biggest investment opportunity of our lifetime, and Canada is extremely well positioned to play in this area. Together, we should be able to capture our full share of this enormous prize.
Thank you. Thank you all. I'm going to ask a few questions of the panelists, but if someone in the audience, this is our first interactive session in this room, so if someone in the audience has a question, you can start to prepare yourself. I'm not sure I can see the mics in the room, but someone at the back will help us with that. You've all talked about digitization, or you've talked about how the internet is going to be helpful in this, how the internet can be disruptive. If we think about the iPhone, it wasn't just that it's a groovy smartphone that we carry around with us, it's that it became a mobile computer. And that is a truly disruptive innovation. But where is the iPhone-like disruptive innovation in energy? Because I think we talk a lot about things that change energy at the margins, that put us into more renewables, 10, 15, 20, 50% renewables into our electricity systems. But Is there an equivalent? Is there a disruptive change like the iPhone in energy? I just like we're not going to hold you to it, but I just am wondering if you can think of an example or you can see the early glimmer, the early edge of something that might offer us this kind of hope for what we're going to see in energy. Wal?
Well, it's already starting to come here. Of course, when you refer to the iPhone, you talk about technology and a business model. There's an enormous revolution going on in automotive. Young kids don't even have a license any longer.
Sure.
Or they are moving to car to go or zip car. So we are moving into this area. In Australia, I see neighborhoods sharing solar and storage. So it's not as far yet as the iPhone, and the iPhone will be a vehicle to drive these things. But it is really getting there, and it is getting faster than we think. It's getting faster than we think.
Interesting. Paul, what would you add?
Yeah, I think one of the things about disruption is it's really hard to see coming, candidly, right? I mean,
Right.
and the iPhone's a good example because people knew they wanted cellular telephony, and that was doing amazing things. But projecting what market sales would look like for the iPhone was really hard to do, and a lot of people missed it completely. It's almost one of those. It's the problem with supply and demand is very often the demand doesn't exist until the supply is there because you just can't imagine it.
Yeah,
the market can't picture it. I think you're exactly right, Wal. This is going to be totally disruptive business models, right? And if you're looking at energy, the way that industrialized countries built their energy systems with centralized power stations, grids, et cetera, why would we think that that's the way the energy system will be at the end of this century? Why? Cell phones, again, perfect example, completely leapfrogged landlines in most of the world, and a lot of the innovation that happened in places in the developing world was brought into the US and Canada and other places later because they could rethink the entire system, the entire model. I think transportation is going to be one of those early things we see. And think about how disruptive from an energy perspective autonomous vehicles are going to be, improved AI and the like. Once you've got completely autonomous vehicles that are circulating, be it Uber or somebody else, what are we going to need parking spaces for? And I know actually the mayor of Vancouver, I had a nice conversation in Paris with him about how is Vancouver going to reuse all of this now free space, free land? I mean, this is in LA. It's about 60% of the surface in Los Angeles is dedicated to cars in some shape or fashion.
Form, yeah.
That's an amazing resource that is going to be transformative to our economy, but also sort of the energy system as well, because now all of a sudden accessibility, transportation, and everything else, and the demand side of things will be totally disrupted. So rather than predicting where it's going to be, I think transportation will be early. I think other business models, be it totally distributed energy generation and demand use, be it novel technologies that help provide baseload like fusion or something. Whoever has that skill of seeing it coming, please let me know so I can put some money in.
Yeah, okay, good. But it's interesting because what you're describing there with parking space is almost like the Netflix Blockbuster dynamic, right? Because, I mean, when was the last time you saw a Blockbuster? And all of these things have happened within 10 years. So that's the other thing about disruptive innovation that I find fascinating is that at the pace of change and with the number of things that are being now driven down after the Paris Agreement and other things, we're going to see global networks of things catch fire, which is one of the things that's, I think, very exciting about what you're doing, Paul. So you're driving this kind of disruptive innovation inside a corporation and then out to your customers. So what do you see?
So I spoke about it a little bit, but that leapfrog, I mean, it's going to be around a business model. We still have to continue to innovate. But you just look at, in the last handful of years, just distributed energy, how it has taken off, how through innovation, the costs of that hardware has come down substantially. But not only that, now with the industrial internet, I mentioned just a data point, that digital layer, those sensors now can get 20% more output out of that energy. Do you know how hard it is at times when you're innovating on hardware? 1%, 2%, 3% more clean energy output. That digital layer can give you 20% more output. And on top of that, I don't think we've even touched on the business model opportunity yet. I think we have to figure out more around.
Be more specific about
So-
what you need, because you've all referred to business models, but be more specific about what you mean.
So look at inside GE today, our business current. We started this because technology costs have come down. Our customers want an integrated solution. They're tired of buying solar, then storage, then an EV. They want an integrated solution that gives them autonomy, maybe to control their power, get it delivered how they get it from the utility, but control their power. Be empowered, autonomously to take advantage of their power, maybe sell it back to the grid, as well as, obviously data and insights around that power gives them a whole new business model on how they could potentially make money with their customers and redeploy funds into their company. So business models are going to be critical. And I just think about, and I don't have the answer to this, but we still have 1.2 billion people on the planet that don't have energy.
Right.
It isn't going to be centralized power that's going to get us there. It's going to be some decentralized way. It'll probably be some type of mobile device where people can opt in for some energy, opt out for energy. I mean, I don't know what it's going to be, but it is going to be around, the business models itself.
And I mean, again, what we're hearing here is that energy is becoming more and more of a personal thing. We're going to have apps that will help us control our energy consumption, to know what that's doing. We have those kinds of visuals for our cars. We're going to have a different kind of personal relationship with energy. And I think people who are innovating to help us have that relationship and then change how we use energy is going to be a big part of it. The other thing that I want to ask you about, you've all spoken a little bit, and I know we could spend a whole hour in this room talking about specific things that you're working on. So if you wanted to say one or two things that have been the most exciting, specific things that you've worked on that you think have been disruptive, either in the market or in your own companies or for you on the investment side, but also talk a little bit about what you see coming over the horizon. I mean, we got a little bit at that, but what else do you see on the horizon? Deb?
So, clearly, we are very committed and leading the way on the industrial internet. Big data meets big iron, machine-to-machine learning. It is taking...
And industrial, you mean
industrial.
manufacturing?
Manufacturing, I mean, we cover the energy sector, the transportation sector, healthcare, water. It is true industrial type equipment now that has data and sensors on it. Like, for instance, one jet engine that flies, it's like a terabyte of data that's coming off that engine. Now you can have real-time insight into what's happening in that engine, have predictive type of solutions, so you don't have downtime, so our customers are more productive. So really, honestly, the industrial internet is going to be game-changing for industry, but it's different. We had to build Predix, a cloud-based platform for the industrial internet. The amounts of data that are coming off some of these big pieces of equipment, like aircraft engines, locomotives, is massive, much, much bigger than a consumer internet, and requires machine-to-machine type learning and insights, but absolutely think it's a game changer. The other thing too, really see new types of materials taking a big leap forward. We are working today on silicon carbide in our solar inverters. Silicon carbide really allows us to reduce some cooling efforts within the solar inverter today. Takes 50% of the cost out. Just a new type of material, new type of design. So really, really, industrial internet, additive manufacturing, new ways, new materials are going to be key.
And the industrial internet sounds like it's for people who make things.
Yeah.
Paul?
I'm really excited about the broad suite of disruptive technologies, the so-called exponential technologies that are coming down the pike, and how they start to get applied to energy in particular. On the data side, there's going to be a revolution in artificial intelligence, for example, just over the next few years. And that's going to be utterly transformative to not only analytics and big data, but how it is that the actual demand side structure works, right? I mean, you can see little glimmers of that in something like the Nest Home thermostat, right, which is not AI formally, but does start to build that kind of feedback intelligence. And that's going to be even more transformative in things like transportation. but also fields that we don't necessarily think of, like synthetic biology, right? I know of a couple of companies that are using synthetic biology to spin out high-octane fuels out of bacteria and some algae, for example. That could be at extremely low energy input levels, which could be a game changer for liquid fuel production. You could apply it into a carbon cycle. Or you mentioned materials. Nanotechnology is already leading. We've seen this exponential decrease in the price of solar PV, of photovoltaics. As soon as these new materials, many of which are nano-based, as well as things like silicon carbide, move onto the scene, what we're going to see is solar everywhere, right? I mean, there are transparent,
Sure.
liquid-based solar films right now that are starting to be put on the surfaces of smartphones to power them. Right? You don't even see it. You can paint walls with some of these things.
Yeah, sure. We were hearing this morning about in the defense sector. So
Exactly.
you think about solar in defense applications on tents, on soldiers in the field. I mean, in the developing world.
And it goes into the developing world. And this is what's remarkable, is that half of these things are self-healing or don't require the same levels of maintenance and such as well. So you have just these opportunities, these technologies that as soon as somebody puts that together with some of the business models we were talking about, we're gonna see a whole disruption of how energy is both generated and used.
Oh, so interesting. The disruption will really be facilitated by the connection of the technology with the business
Absolutely.
model. Wall?
Yeah, no, that is exactly what I'm very excited about. It's more than just Internet of Things. It's Internet of Things as enabler of this enormous fusion of sciences and other industries, which will enable things we have not even thought about. Any of you recently rewatched Blade Runner?
The original one?
The original one? It's very interesting. You should go back. You'll realize how difficult it will be to forecast the future. So, Blade Runner, based on the book Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, written in 1969, Blade Runner, the movie in 1982, describing LA in 2018, 2 years from now. And they have many things totally wrong. Of course, we have flying cars. But strangely, everybody is still smoking inside. They have not envisioned for a moment something like the internet. It's a very interesting shot in Blade Runner that a guy makes a phone call on a type of traditional New York payphone with a little screen, and at the end it says, this call cost $1.95. I mean, forecasting the future will be extremely difficult. But what we know is that this enormous explosion of innovation that we currently go through will come up with totally exciting new things that we cannot even envision. The one danger I see for us in the West is the following. I travel a lot all over the world. I talk to many business people. And there is a very subtle but definite difference between talking to executives in big companies, either in Europe or North America, or in Asia. The undertone in Europe and North America is always starting with holding on to the past. And in Asia, even in Japan these days, it's more about shaping the future. If we don't want to get our lunch eaten, we better start playing.
Mm-hmm. We better start shaping. We better start shaping. So if I can, does anyone have a question from the floor? So I see three. 1, 2, 3. Yes, please. Minister Carr acknowledged you from the podium, and I'm sorry.
Yes,
and you'll have to, will you speak up? Does anyone have do we have a live mic somewhere?
And here is somebody running with a microphone.
Ooh! Oh, there you go.
well, Test. Okay. Jim Harris here, at the back.
Sorry. Can you just wait 1 second? I have a gentleman
Sure,
here.
Velma.
Just 1 second. There, please.
Sure. Thanks very much. I'm Leonardo Beltran.
Can you hold it closer to you?
I'm Deputy Secretary of Energy from Mexico. And thanks very much for the opportunity to address the audience. And
Thank you.
very much for your comments. Can you state your opinion about mission innovation?
Yes.
and the Breakthrough Energy Coalition.
Thank you. Now, do you all know about Mission Innovation?
I only know a little bit, not enough to speak to it.
No? Paul?
I know enough to say that I'm a big fan of trying absolutely anything. In particular, something like Mission Innovation is a really remarkable way to show.
Let me do this, because if you don't know, then I'm betting that the rest of the if this group of disruptive change agents doesn't know, I'm not sure that everybody in the audience would know. So Mission Innovation was announced by Bill Gates and 30 plus of the largest VCs around the world in Paris as a way of saying, basically, our innovation system is broken. We're going to invest hundreds of billions of dollars in the next 5 years to accelerate changes in energy innovation. Bill Gates has gone on to make his annual letter about energy and the changes that he's bringing. And so governments around the world, including ours, Minister Carr spoke about this as well, have said that Canada is going to participate in this and be a full one. So interestingly, we need innovation and disruption even in our innovation system, because that was what Gates was putting his finger on. So,
I was going to say that in particular, what I love about the Mission Innovation piece is it is bringing the sort of government side of things. And what Bill Gates and the
government with VCs.
I would say what Bill Gates really pioneered, trying to get this money off the sidelines, this massive amount of capital that's needed, is absolutely critical. I love the fact, though, that governments are partnering into that, because the scale of the challenge, I mean, the capital investment needed in some of these, for these breakthroughs is insane. I mean, it's huge. And we need that type of initiative all moving in the same direction. That kind of focus and leverage is really, really critical. So I think and honestly, I'm one of those people that says you have to try something, and we have to make big bets, because the threats themselves are even bigger still.
Yep.
Although it's extremely important, of course, the dollars are quite modest so far. I mean, the target that Gates announced in Paris was going from 10 billion today to 20 billion in the coming years. Like I said before, two things. A is we need lots of capital for the innovation we need. And most of that will need to come from the private sector. And very important is, how do we get the private sector to move? Because what is extremely disappointing is that many people in the private sector are being run, financial institutions are being run by the risk department today. That is not very helpful. We need much more capital. But great initiative, need to do more, but the focus on breakthrough innovation should not stop us to start rolling out more and more of the innovations that we have today and build up renewable infrastructure. Okay. Because that needs to happen anyway.
So you've all been patient because we started late. I'm just going to allow, did Jim Harris leave? Does he still want to ask his question? No.
Still here. There we go.
Oh, there you are. There you are. So
The
can I ask, there's
invisible
two
body.
people holding these groovy Bob boxes, so I'll let you two ask your questions. And then we'll answer from the panel.
Great. Jim Harris. Certain amount of frustration with nuclear fusion being held out as our solution because it's decades away. And there are things that are available right now we're not doing, like lighting is 27% of our use of electricity in North America. LEDs cut that by more than half with a less than 1 year payback. Power supplies for the 4 billion electronic devices. These devices, when they're off in the world today, collectively consume 480 terawatt hours of power, which is equal to all the nuclear power that comes out of France, China, and India added together. All that power to power things that are off. So simple legislation to change that has a huge impact. So I'd like to ask the group not to focus on the future, but what is the kind of warlike efforts we should be focused on right now?
Great question. And was there a lovely woman? Oh, there, standing with the box. Not a woman, but you have the box. So that's the box. This is the technology equivalent of the talking stick. Well, so please, ask your question and then we'll respond.
My question is, in view of the enormous thermodynamic efficiencies achievable by shifting to electric vehicles and the exponentially declining costs, why should it take more than 10 years to achieve a total transition?
who wants to take those two? So the questions are, what could we do today? What's there, not in the future trends, but what's there to do today about some of the kinds of things that Jim talked about? And then why is it going to take us more than 10 years to completely change the vehicle fleet?
Well, I shared with you this funny tweet from Michael Liebrecht. If the UK had to change to electricity for all the cars and all the households, that would mean building, in his official tweet, is 1 million additional windmills. That is impossible. So we should not stop, and we should do all the things on LEDs and what have you that the first person asked about. But it is simply not enough. We need further new breakthrough innovations. Going to 100% renewables in 10 years. We all love and aspire a carbon-free society. But I think that if we put out targets that are so stretched that they are not doable, we will lose the support of many that we need to have on this journey. We need to have realistic, doable targets. And I'm very sorry, I think that it came up in the discussion here multiple times. 10 years, we would all love that, but it is impossible. The science is not there, the technologies are not there yet.
So, Paul?
Both of these are both really good questions, and it gets to the heart of the fact that there's so much we can be doing now, and I know a lot of us feel frustrated that we're not using all of the opportunities currently at our disposal. I mean, if I was prescient enough to know exactly why that is, but I will comment one reason I think it seems like it's too slow to electrify the transportation sector, or why we're not doing more, even more with efficiency or other types of demand side issues, is that we're literally talking about, in energy, the system that built our modern day civilization. I mean, this is foundational to everything we enjoy in our lives. Right? We are no longer using animal power for the majority of our work that gets done. We are using dead animal and dead plant power from hundreds of millions of years ago, right? That's what that means is it's intertwined with everything we do, and as a result, the incumbency of everything from infrastructure to the organizations to the laws and policies that govern and regulate that are so. I mean, for anybody in Canada, you have a great healthcare system, but anybody remembers the United States trying to change its healthcare law and pass Obamacare remembers that trying to disentangle the complexities there from pricing of one commodity to the insurance structure was so complex as to result in this massively burdensome thing that's still not perfect, right? Energy is exponentially harder than that. So I think there's a frustration because the incumbents are there. Now, one thing I will say is, I think we're starting to see some inflection points where the pace of change, the pace of adoption of things we need now is really coming about. What I want even more of it are the big incumbent players to be a part of that adoption. So somebody like GE or Philips, right? Philips Lighting is now, I think, their biggest division because of LEDs, right? They made a big bet, transformed their business. This is what we want companies to. We want GE and Philips. We don't want Kodak, right? Who helped invent the digital camera and then couldn't figure out how to stop themselves from going bankrupt as a result.
So, Deb, last word to you.
So I agree a lot with what the panelists have said here. I think we live in a hybrid world. You have the legacy systems that continue to need to go. We need to continue to have breakthroughs, new business models, but more than ever, we need to collaborate. And that ecosystem of players, the market, government, private sector, we need to make some of this happen. And I do think, honestly, we need financing around the world as well in order to drive a lot of this adoption and acceleration. It's business models, but it's also financing. And we need that in order to accelerate this pace and really scale much more quickly than ever before. So I think that's another key lever that we haven't talked about.
Well, and the financing piece in the Paris Agreement is a big part of why it's exciting, why what is ahead in the international negotiations is so exciting, because we're going to see financing and and an import-export conversation happening between developed and developing countries around the exchange on a lot of these technologies. So, my fellow Globe attendees, thank you so much for sticking with us and dealing with a little physical disruption as well as hearing about all kinds of technological disruption. I wonder if you would join with me in thanking Deb, Wal, and Paul. And I wish you a good day here.